Bo Nickal will be a future champ. After having an extremely impressive collegiate wrestling career and also getting 2 wins on the Dana White Contender Series, Bo was finally signed to the UFC and he has a ton of hype around him. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy MMA, I make opinionative MMA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it. Wrestling has been widely regarded as the best base for an MMA fighter. It makes you a better striker because now your opponent needs to focus on the takedown threat, and it would be a lot easier to land shots on your opponent. It traditionally gives you better cardio, and not to mention you also have the ability to dominate your opponent for 3 or 5 rounds on the ground. And when you look at the UFC champions and just the top fighters in the UFC as a whole, most of them have very good or even great wrestling within their games. So that's why when a guy as accomplished in wrestling as Bo Nickal was decided to transition into MMA, there was a ton of hype around his name. And after 3 professional MMA fights that Bo has had, there's a ton to like about this guy. And it's not all wrestling. Bo has actually shown a really nice ability to strike out there. Now, of course, we haven't necessarily seen him tested against the best guys, and we haven't even seen him strike all that much in fights, but based on the limited sample size that we have seen thus far, there definitely is a lot to like about his striking game. Bo does a really nice job at throwing feints out there. Now, whether that means he feints a takedown, fakes a jab, fakes an overhand left or an overhand right, it doesn't really matter. He just has a very nice understanding of fighting. So what Bo would do out there is he does a nice job at feinting a takedown, and if his opponent overreacts to it, he then throws an overhand right, and typically he does catch them, as that's exactly what we saw in his last fight. But besides that, Bo has a nice ability to throw a jab, a left straight, a right straight even as well. He has nice uppercuts, nice hooks. It's pretty apparent that he does have a good amount of power. In terms of his kicks, he definitely has an ability to throw kicks to the legs, but something that he does utilize a lot actually is kicks to the head, which certainly could be pretty effective for him. He has a nice ability to throw knees to the body, elbows in close, has a nice ability to fight in the clinch, and overall in terms of his stand-up game, at this point it isn't necessarily the most sophisticated, but at the same time there is a lot to like, especially considering how good of a wrestler he is. And he does a really nice job at utilizing that wrestling to make his striking better. But now let's talk about the ability that got all this hype around his name, and that's his ground game, but more specifically his wrestling. Now, in terms of his takedown defense, of course he has phenomenal takedown defense. It's going to be near impossible for most of these guys to take him down, and it's going to be interesting to see if people even try. But in terms of his offensive wrestling, he's also phenomenal. He's able just to take down his opponents at will with a single leg, a double leg, it doesn't really matter. He also has a really nice ability to have control time on top, where either A, he can throw ground and pound shots, or B, he can even throw up submissions, which is another thing that you wouldn't necessarily expect him to be very good at, but he has shown a nice ability to throw up submissions, especially in his last matchup in the Dana White Contender Series. He immediately threw up a triangle and it landed right away, and he got the tap right away, which was very, very impressive to watch. And at this point, it's pretty apparent that Bo is already the best wrestler in his division, which is kind of crazy to say considering he literally just got signed. Now, it's going to be interesting to see if him and Hamzat eventually match up, how their wrestling ability matches up against each other, but in my opinion, it does seem like Bo Nickal would be the better wrestler. Now, although there's a ton of hype around his name, there are still a ton of questions, of course. He hasn't really faced anybody of significance as of yet, so it would be interesting to see how he fares in that. Also, another thing that would be interesting to see is how his cardio holds up over 3 rounds or even 5 rounds in the future. Another thing that we haven't really seen anything of yet is his chin. How good is his chin? Is he able to take big shots? Is he not able to take big shots? Does he move his head well? There definitely are a lot of questions about Bo, but at this point, based on what we've seen of him, it's pretty apparent that this guy is very, very talented and has a ton of hype around his name, and deservingly so. He's just very good. And in my opinion, I know it is very early, and maybe once you read the title of the video, you may say that sounds ridiculous, but honestly, I think based on his wrestling acumen alone, I do do think he has a legitimate chance at being a future UFC champ. Now, obviously, all those concerns and questions that I just mentioned are definitely there, and they definitely are big factors. For example, if he doesn't have a chin whatsoever, it's going to be difficult to get all that far in MMA. But of course, there's no reason to believe that his chin would be bad, for example, or that he would have terrible cardio. We just haven't seen it yet, so to know, we would just need to see it, obviously. And overall, a lot of people could say that this guy's overhyped and he's not as good as people are saying, which of course you definitely could make the argument. This guy hasn't done anything yet, he hasn't proven anything, and although he has looked very impressive in every matchup that he has been in, he hasn't went up against anybody really significant yet. Of course, that makes sense, he just started MMA, but based on the hype that he does have at this point, you would like to see him face better guys. Now, he has already signed up for his first UFC bout against Jamie Pickett, which definitely would be an interesting matchup, although I think Bo probably wins that very easily, and the early odds say exactly that. He's a humongous favorite, but I think what the UFC is going to do, assuming that he does run through Jamie Pickett, is they're probably going to put him up against a couple of lower level guys, maybe one or two more after Jamie, and then they're going to start to bump up the competition. Maybe get a ranked guy in after that, then maybe getting a top 10, then maybe getting into the top 5, and you're talking about high level fighters at that point. I feel like that might be the progression for him. Maybe a similar progression to Khamzat Chimaev, assuming that Bo actually looks very good in these matchups against these lower level guys, and as he moves up the ranks, if he continues to look extremely impressive as well, just like Khamzat was able to do. But of course, that's a very big if. At this point, he just needs to focus on what he can focus on, and if he just continues to train hard and just continues to get better, the success will come with time. So it's going to be very interesting to see where his career goes from here. Of course, he has a ton of hype around him. People expect this guy to be a future champ, or at the very least a top 5 fighter, and I would definitely consider myself included in that. But at the end of the day, no matter how much hype he has going around him, it doesn't really matter. It comes down to him in the end. How hard is he willing to train? How will he perform on the biggest stage? Will he be able to overcome adversity? Because eventually there's going to be a time where maybe he gets hurt in a fight, or maybe his opponent's stuffing his takedowns for the most part, and the big key would be to see how he actually overcomes that, or if he even could overcome that. But I guess only time will tell what does end up happening with the exciting career of Bo Nickal. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Bo Nickal has a chance at being a future UFC champ, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy it, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.